One. Live.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another of our Facebook Live sessions. As usual, this session is based on issues relating to citizens' rights, and those issues are connected with the Withdrawal Agreement. Tonight, I'm chairing, I'm Aidan, I'm the Vice Consul at the British Embassy, and my colleagues who will be doing most of the answering of the questions are probably both familiar to you, but I'll ask them to introduce themselves. Jerry?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jerry Williams. I work at the British Embassy in Rome.
And I'm Greta. I'm a caseworker at the International Organization for Migration.
Thank you. We frequently find in these sessions that we have more questions than we can answer, and obviously we can only apologise at the outset if we don't get to your question. We'll do our best to deal with as many as we can. There may be some questions which are, in a sense, beyond the topic, and we won't try and answer questions which aren't related to citizens' rights, which are tied to the Withdrawal Agreement, because obviously that's what we're trying to cover. And if we get a series of questions on a particular subject, we might just, in a sense, give a general answer, which we hope answers the queries of a number of you. So if your name isn't read out, it's specifically attached to a question, it doesn't mean that we are ignoring the issue. And please listen out for answers that answer the query that you've raised, even if it's not asked under your name. We have got some questions already, and so I think we'll just kick off and look forward to seeing what it is that you want us to deal with. What I hope is a very simple question from Jane Karnak about the attestazione di iscrizione anagrafica. The local comune have said a bollo is not necessary. Now, the question says the bollo is not necessary in the attestazione di iscrizione anagrafica. Is this correct for the carta di soggiorno?
Yeah, I will take it. So in terms of the Carta di Soggiorno, it is correct that there is no marca da bollo that needs to be paid. There is a bollettino, which is a different thing, and is like a payslip that you pay at the post office. But for the marca da bollo, which is the one you buy from the tabacchi, there is no need for it for the Carta di Soggiorno at the Questura. For the attestazione, in theory, there is a marca da bollo attached to the issuing of the document. If the comune say that it's not necessary, you know, no need to insist, I would say, you know, the document does remain valid, and you can only follow the advice of the comune if they don't want the marca da bollo. And with the attestazione, then you can present that at the Questura as evidence of your residency to then obtain the Carta di Soggiorno.
Okay, I hope that's helpful. Actually, just as I'm looking through the questions that have already come in, and there are lots and lots of them, so thank you very much, folks. There are lots about driving licenses, and I suppose the essential issues that people are asking about are, do I have to take a test in Italy in order to get an Italian driving license? Or is there an exchange program? And if there isn't, how are the negotiations going for setting one in place? And I guess it might be useful at this point, and we may perhaps repeat it later on, just to summarise where we've got to on driving licences, because that's clearly an important issue for many people.
Sure, I'll say a few words about that, thanks. So the top line really is that if you are a UK national who's settled in Italy, who's resident in Italy, you should obtain an Italian driving licence. Currently, to obtain an Italian driving licence, you will need to resit your test when exchanging it from your UK licence. We are in negotiations currently with the Italian government for an agreement to continue the right, to protect the right to exchange a UK licence for an Italian one without the requirement to sit a test. But those negotiations continue, and until those negotiations are complete, you are going to have to retake your test to get an Italian licence. The Italian government has recently announced that if you were resident in Italy before the 1st of January this year, so you registered your residency before the start of this year, then you've got until the end of this year, 31st of December, to continue to be able to use your UK driving licence in Italy. So there's that kind of grace period of the whole of this year that your UK licence has to be a valid UK licence, will continue to be recognised in Italy. If you registered your residency after the 1st of January, then your UK driving licence can continue to be valid in Italy for up to 12 months from the date you registered your residency. So that's all a bit complicated. To say it in very simple terms, briefer terms, if you were resident before the start of this year, you've got until the 31st of December to continue to use your UK driving licence, but you should be obtaining an Italian licence. And to do so, you're going to have to retake your test. I'll just add one thing. If you started to exchange your UK licence for an Italian one last year, let's say at the end of last year, but you didn't complete the process, you can continue to exchange it for an Italian one without having to resit your test. So that's if you started the process last year and you just haven't completed it.
And I know from watching the Facebook pages that there are people who've found that process has come to a halt and they've been told it can't go any further, but they should be allowed to complete it if the process was actually started prior to the end of 2020. Yeah,
the Italian government has confirmed that in writing. So if you are having problems, you started the process last year and now you're being told you can't complete it, you're going to have to retake a test, get in touch with us via our Living in Italy page on gov.uk. and we can provide some further information to you.
Thank you. We've got a number of questions about health cover. Joanne Dunkley said that she went to her local ASLA today to renew her Tessera Sanitaria. Last year she became a permanent resident and she has the permanent residency document, but her Tessera is only valid to the end of 2021. And is this correct? She thought she would be getting a Tessera with a longer validity. Is there any comment on that?
I mean, certainly as a permanent resident, you have the right to access healthcare. That's linked to your permanent residency. Sometimes the ASLs want to know how you've acquired that permanent residency status. So to be a permanent resident, you need to have been living in Italy for more than 5 years or more continuous residency. How were you accessing healthcare during those 5 years is sometimes relevant to how you can access healthcare as a permanent resident. So you really do need to discuss your options with your local ASL. But if you are being told that you only have a healthcare card valid for a shorter sort of duration than you were expecting, definitely speak to them about that. And if you feel that that's not correct, get in touch with us, because the beginning of this year, the Ministry of Health very helpfully issued a number of guidance notes to all the regional ASL offices, confirming that under the withdrawal agreement, healthcare rights continue to people who are beneficiaries of the withdrawal agreement. So it may be that that needs sort of highlighting with the local ASL. So do get in touch with us if you're having problems in accessing healthcare, again, via our Living in Italy page. I don't know if you want to add anything, Greta.
Okay. A couple of questions about S1s related to, one is at what age can you apply for an S1? Is that state pension age or when you retire? That's from Louise Morgan. And then there's another one asking about using private healthcare whilst awaiting an S1 form. Somebody who's 75 with a UK pension and a NATO pension and permanent residency, Julie Dixon. So at what age can you apply for an S1? And also, can you use private healthcare whilst awaiting an S1?
I mean, as far as I understand it, there's no age, sort of maximum age you have to be. The S1 is linked to when you start receiving your UK state pension, if you're eligible for one, or other. It's not just a UK state pension, it's also other exportable benefits. So you should definitely check with the overseas healthcare team at the NHS, and their details are on our Living in Italy page as to whether you're eligible for an S1. They'll be able to advise you, but it's not linked to age. It's, as I say, linked to the fact that you are in receipt of a UK state pension, and that that can be different according to the individual. So it's definitely worth checking if you're eligible for an S1, and if you are, then you can register for healthcare in Italy with that S1. Before you receive your S1, if you're eligible for it, I mean, it's up to you how you then access healthcare in that time that you're waiting, but there's nothing to stop you having private healthcare insurance in that interim period. There are other ways of accessing healthcare in Italy. You might be able to access it through your employer or as a self-employed, or even by paying voluntary contributions, which is an annual fee. There's a variety of routes by which you can access healthcare, but there's nothing to stop you accessing healthcare in the interim period before you're awaiting your S1. And if you want to have more details about how to access healthcare in Italy, it's quite complicated because of those different routes that you can use to register with your ASL. Do have a look at our Living in Italy page. There is a very detailed guide on registering for healthcare in Italy, which takes you through all the different options available.
And sort of linked to that, Jerry, a question from Sheena. I have an S1 and therefore an Italian tessera sanitaria. I'm a pensioner. Do I need health insurance as well in Italy, or can I just rely on the S1?
No, the S1 will allow you to register with your ASL, to have a GP, and to be have an Italian healthcare card that you can use in Italy. Just to be clear, S1, if you're registered for healthcare in Italy with an S1, it basically means the UK is paying, it's still paying for your healthcare. When you go back to the UK, you'll be using that S1 for healthcare cover in the UK. But when you travel around the EU, you'll be using a UK issued EHIC. So you won't be using your Italian healthcare card when travelling around the EU. You'll be using a UK issued EHIC or your S1 back in the UK. So it is slightly different to perhaps someone who's registered by being employed in Italy with an Italian healthcare card. There's two different types of Italian healthcare cards, so it's just worth remembering that. But no, if you're registered for healthcare with an S1, you have healthcare in Italy. Our advice when travelling is even if you've got an S1, get that travel insurance to cover for all eventualities.
Yeah. And I suppose another linked question to this on this same theme, Penelope saying, if I've got a private health insurance policy, I for instance, through work or by choice, is it correct if the ASL say I can't also apply to join the voluntary scheme because I've got this private policy?
Yeah, I know Penny's raised this in the past with us, I think at our last event, and we looked into this afterwards. It does seem that some ASLs, not all, but some ASLs have that sort of requirement that you can't have private healthcare insurance to be able to be eligible to pay the voluntary contribution. So you really need to speak to your ASL about the options that are available to you.
Okay. I hope that's helpful on healthcare. Just excuse me while I just scroll through some of the questions to check what the issues are that are emerging. There are various questions about delays in getting appointments at Questura for the new Carta di Soggiorno. I don't know if maybe Greta wants to say anything about the sort of state of play generally in terms of people who are trying to get the Carta di Soggiorno, which I mean I know people are now getting hold of, and we've seen plenty, but clearly people are still experiencing some problems or some anxieties about it.
Yeah, so I think generally, obviously, each questura might have different circumstances in terms of capacity of the staff, depends on the restriction of COVID and how many people they can see. So there is a different length, both in terms of how quick you might get a reply and appointments time. So we know some questura reply straight away, but maybe the appointments is in 2 months' time, while other might take a while to reply. In terms of maybe feeling anxious of not getting a reply, I think, a couple of weeks, absolutely normal, up to a month. Maybe after a month, do send a chaser. One of the things we would recommend is to always use a PEC, which is a certified email, because the Questura have PEC accounts, and some PEC accounts just don't receive normal emails from, Gmail or Libero, or they might receive them, but they go into the junk folder. So to be sure that they have received your email, you should set up a PEC account. It's quite easy. You can, search on Google. There will be various options, and then use that to email the Questura. You can find the list of Questura and dedicated email address on the Living in Italy page on IOM website, so that you can see which email you should send it to. Usually has Regno Unito in the email address, so it's specific for this Carta di Soggiorno, and not emailing general emails that that might get lost. So once you've done all of that, you also get a receipt, so you can see that the Questura has received your email. So once all of that is done, I think if you follow that process and you don't get a reply in a month, then it's time for a chaser. We know that some Questura are struggling with delays, and you can get in touch with us if you're concerned that the Questura is just not getting back to you. You can find all the details for IOM on the Living in Italy page. In terms of the delay in issuing the cards, I think now we're seeing that the cards are being issued after a few weeks from the appointment date. They give you a receipt, sorry, last bit. They give you a receipt at the appointment, and with that you should be able to check on a website what's the status of your application. So unless your Questura has told you differently, like we will call you, then to check where the application is at, you check on the website, and if there is a green tick, then it's ready and they should contact you to go and pick it up. Again, each Questura has got different procedure, so they should send you a text, but if you don't hear in a few weeks since the green tick, maybe contact them either by email or calling, just to check that how you can go and pick up the card.
Great, thank you, Greta. Another healthcare question actually linked, or a Testa Sanitaria question linked to residents. Somebody who managed to get themselves resident on the date of the 10th of December last year, so they're in time, formally registered. But when they went to the ASLA to get their Testa Sanitaria, the ASLA said to them, "Oh, we don't really know what to do with you because we're not sure what you are, whether you're EU or non-EU." And they're saying that the process for applying for a Testa Sanitaria has been stalled because of this. This person, Rachel, is saying she's without ID documents or healthcare because the Comune are saying, "Oh, we don't know quite," or the ASLA rather, saying we don't know quite how to deal with you. Is there anything that we can say to people in Rachel's position?
I mean, certainly if you were settled in Italy before the end of the year, then the withdrawal agreement protects your right to access healthcare if you have the right to access healthcare in Italy through one of the routes that I outlined earlier. So please do get in touch with us via our Living in Italy page. At the very bottom of the page is the contact form. You could send us a quick message on that contact form, and that will come through to us, and we can look into your situation. Because as I say, at the beginning of this year, the Ministry of Health was very clear with the regional ASL on the continued rights of UK nationals to access healthcare here in Italy. And, there are different routes to do so. As I mentioned before, you can do it through employer contributions as a self-employed. You can potentially, not in every region, but pay voluntary contributions to register for healthcare, or you can do it via one of the reciprocal healthcare agreements, like via an S1, whereby the UK is paying for your healthcare. All those details are on our Living in Italy page. But you really need to discuss your options with ASL, and if they're telling you something you don't think is correct, and you feel that your rights aren't being recognised, get in touch with us, and we can certainly look into it.
Thank you. A general question from Elisabetta. How long will there be assistance with the issues we're bumping up against with the Italian authorities from A, the consulate embassy, and B, IOM?
So, I mean, the consular team, fantastic consular teams are here to stay and provide fantastic support to those having, really serious issues, especially the most vulnerable. They will continue offering and providing valuable consular support. You can get in touch with consular services 24/7. And in terms of the UK National Support Fund, we're delighted that funding has been extended so they can continue to support UK nationals, especially in getting the new Carta di Soggiorno. That's clearly their focus. And again, it's really about supporting the most vulnerable, the elderly, people who have difficulties in using perhaps online platforms or perhaps have language difficulties that is causing a real barrier. We're delighted that IOM is still with us to continue offering support to UK nationals and family members living here.
Yep. And obviously from an embassy point of view, we're delighted to continue working with IOM who've got on top of some of these awfully complicated issues very, very quickly. So we will continue working closely together to try and resolve things as much as we possibly can. There are quite a number of continuing questions about waiting and delays and stuff. So obviously that continues to be a challenge for people.
Shall I say a few words, Aidan, just because I can imagine there's obviously quite a bit of anxiety and concern about the delays. So it might be worth just saying a few words that about the new card. I mean, if you were settled in Italy before the end of the year, you were lawfully living in Italy before the 31st December, your rights are protected automatically by the withdrawal agreement. The new card, it's really important. You should definitely try to obtain it when you can, but your rights don't depend on holding it. So I completely take on board. There's a lot of concern if you're waiting, you don't know what's happening with your request. And as Greta says, do chase it if you haven't heard after a month or so. But don't worry that your rights are going to be taken away from you if you don't have the new card. Italy is using a declaratory system, which means your rights under the withdrawal agreement fall to you automatically and stay with you for as long as you remain living in Italy. So it's absolutely, the right thing to do to get in touch with your questora to request the new card. But there's no deadline to do so, and your rights don't depend on having it. Okay,
thank you. A slight tangent. There's a question about the dichiarazione di ospitalità for UK family members. Now, it's not necessarily strictly withdrawal agreement, but it's obviously very relevant to those of us who've been here for a while and who are registered. If we have family coming to stay, what do we need to do about that in terms of notifying the authorities?
So this is Italian immigration law that applies to non-EU nationals who are staying even for a short stay. So it's about the nationality of your guest coming to stay with you. And now that the UK is out of the EU, obviously if you have UK guests, national guests, so guests who are of UK nationality, they are considered as non-EU nationals and therefore need to meet the requirements of this immigration law. So you do need to inform in writing your local questora when you have guests staying. There isn't a minimum amount of time. You need to just inform them in writing. If you have EU nationals as guests, I think it's if they're staying for a certain period of time, over 30 days, if I remember correctly. But we've updated our Living in Italy page. I'm sorry to keep talking about the Living in Italy page. Actually, I'm not going to apologise for it because we want everybody to look at it. But it's very repetitive. Sorry, but we have updated. There's a brand new section on hosting guests at your property. So do have a look at that. It links to the relevant immigration law. So you can have a look at it for yourself. It's Article 7. And it also links to the list of questure, so that you can check which is your local questora to get in touch with.
Thank you. Sorry for jumping around, Jerry and Greta. A question from Mohini about problems with Florence Anagrafe and just being completely unable to get hold of them in response to previous correspondence. They sent an email to say that they'd given Mohini a residenza, but in order to obtain a certificate, she or he had to call the number to make an appointment, and the number, they either hang up or the computer system hangs up just as they're making the appointment. So clearly there seem to be some sort of glitches going on with Florence. Do we know anything about how Florence is getting along?
I completely feel this question because I've been trying to get hold of the municipality for a while. They have been really struggling with their capacity. There are delays in processing their application. We know that they're still working through some of the, residency requests sent in December. So clearly, quite long delays. In terms of the number, yes, sometimes you manage to get through. I've been lucky and managed to get through and get appointments, but it's not always very easy. There is a PEC account that you can find on their website, and that's the means that we've been using to contact the municipality. So sending them a PEC email to their PEC account and asking for an appointment. If you're really not getting anywhere, please do get in touch with us. We know that there have been some issues with their reaction to emails, so you can contact us at IOM and we can try and help with this specific issue.
Thank you, Greta. An interesting question that's just come up about getting the new Carta di Soggiorno. Amit is asking about what happens if people who are entitled to it aren't well and aren't able to stand and queue, for instance, if that happens. I mean, certainly my experience at Rome was that people who were coming to get the new card didn't have to stand in the queue and were brought forward, and we had a short queue inside. But if there's somebody who's going to struggle with queuing, is there any way that anything can be done to help those people? I mean, he's talking about somebody elderly with Alzheimer's, for instance, who's entitled to get the card but is going to struggle with the queue.
I'm sure that Jerry will want to add to this. In terms of vulnerability, obviously, I think we need to distinguish between someone that might just struggle to stand in the queue but would be able to get to the questura. And in that case, I think the person should go to the questura, but maybe it can be pointed out when arriving at the questura that this person will struggle to stand. That could be, a woman that is pregnant, and it just needs to be notified arriving at the questura. The issue of someone that is housebound or that, as someone that has Alzheimer's might just not be able to go through the process, that again should be highlighted to the questura. And ask for an alternative to the person attending for their appointment. I think Jerry might want to add some more in terms of your discussions on this.
Yeah, thanks, Greta. I mean, we've been engaging intensively with the Ministry of Interior on what support is available to the most vulnerable, especially those who simply can't attend an in-person appointment at the questura. And the Ministry of Interior have confirmed that, for example, a paper version of the card would be available. So no need to have biometric, the fingerprints taken for that card. You would probably need a family member or a carer would need to provide a note from the local doctor to confirm that the person was unable to attend the appointment in person. And then, the questura would then handle, issue that card, but the paper copy as appropriate. And would also, the carer would potentially be able to pick it up as well. So there's definitely a route. I would say if you are having problems, definitely get in touch with IOM. I mean, that is absolutely, without wishing to speak on Greta's behalf, that's absolutely IOM's remit, is to support the most vulnerable. So if you feel a family member is going to struggle to get into the questura, definitely get in touch with IOM. And we can also in parallel speak to the Ministry of Interior, who are really keen to be alerted to specific cases so they can work with the local questura to ensure that that person gets the card that they're entitled to. So there is lots of support available out there for you. It's really, really important that everyone who's entitled to the card is able to receive a version of it.
Great, thank you. A slightly different question here from Christine. She's saying she's heard today that France, for example, is asking UK citizens post-Brexit to provide certain documents if they enter the country, like holiday insurance, proof of where they're staying. And she's saying, do those sorts of requirements apply to people who are long-term resident, registered resident in somewhere like Italy? She said she's a resident in Italy but has got a holiday home in France, and she's just wondering, what it means for her when she's travelling and what she needs to produce. Are we able to help on that?
So certainly if you're resident in Italy and you're coming back to Italy, the withdrawal agreement gives you rights of not being questioned at the border for your reason for travel, not having to show financial resources or a return ticket. You won't have your passport stamped. You'll need to evidence that you're resident in Italy. So take along your new Carta di Soggiorno if you have it, or your current residency document. If you're resident in Italy and you're travelling elsewhere in the Schengen area, you are limited to the 90 and 180-day visa-free. So the withdrawal agreement doesn't give you those freedom of movement rights. So just be aware that you are limited to the 90 and 180-day. But it does give you what's called facilitated entry and exit rights. So you shouldn't be routinely questioned at the border. You shouldn't have a passport stamped. You don't need the 6 months validity on your British passport, for example, travelling around the Schengen area. It's you to count those 90 and 180 days, because another member state has the right to evidence when you arrived or when you're leaving. So just, the day you enter another country, I don't know, keep hold of a receipt or some kind of evidence that shows when that 90-day clock started ticking. But as somebody who benefits under the withdrawal agreement, you have what's called that facilitated entry and exit rights, which means, within the Schengen areas, there aren't borders anyway. There aren't sort of internal borders, so that questioning shouldn't happen anyway, travelling within the Schengen area. But as I say, you have facilitated entry and exit rights, which mean you shouldn't be questioned routinely at the border or have your passport stamped. But you will need to meet the 90 and 180-day limit on visa-free travel.
And just thinking about that, I've noticed again on Facebook posts that some people are having their passports stamped when they're going from Italy back to the UK, and we're puzzled about why that should be happening. So clearly there are a number of issues around the stamping of documents or the stamping of passports for those of us who are resident.
Yeah, so if you are resident in the EU, if you're resident in Italy, you were lawfully living here before the end of last year, you're covered by the withdrawal agreement. As I say, do take your new Carta di Soggiorno. That's one of the reasons to request the Carta di Soggiorno. It's a small plastic card that fits into your wallet, into your bag, that you can carry with you, so you can show border guards that you are a resident in Italy. And that means your passport shouldn't be stamped. It shouldn't be stamped when leaving Italy temporarily to go to the UK, and it shouldn't be stamped when coming back into Italy. It shouldn't be stamped when transiting another airport. I know that there have been some issues at Schiphol, for example, in the Netherlands, where people who are resident in Italy are having their passport stamped. And, we are engaging on that. We really need to know if your passport's been stamped in error. So please get in touch with us, because we will be raising that with the relevant border guards and with the Ministry of Interior. It's not happening a lot. We're not receiving reports of high numbers. Obviously, I recognise it's concerning if you get a passport stamped in error, but just be aware it has absolutely no impact on your rights in Italy. If you're a resident in Italy, it's frustrating, it's annoying to have your passport stamped, but it has absolutely no impact on your rights here in Italy. But do let us know if it's happened.
A question just linked to rights, I suppose, again. Barbara's saying, I've got Italian citizenship with Italian documents. Do I have to change my documents as I'm also a British citizen?
So we get asked a lot of questions from dual nationals. There's lots of dual nationals in Italy, and we're talking about UK Italian nationals, so who have UK and Italian nationality. If you hold Italian nationality in Italy, you're required legally to register your residency through your Italian nationality, with your Italian nationality. So once you've obtained Italian nationality, you need to go to your comune and sort of re-register as an Italian national. And your rights in Italy flow from your Italian nationality because you have Italian nationality in Italy. Of course, Italian nationality also gives you freedom of movement rights, so you can travel around the Schengen area as an EU national. But you also, if you previously enjoyed freedom of movement rights, so you moved to Italy under freedom of movement rules, you also, through your UK nationality, enjoy rights under the withdrawal agreement. That's really sort of relevant for example, perhaps a UK state pension or other benefits out of the UK. But as I say, your rights in Italy stem from your Italian nationality. So the main action is make sure you're registered for residency through your Italian nationality. You can then get an Italian ID card that says you're an Italian national, an Italian passport, etc. if you wanted it. But the Carta di Soggiorno, the new withdrawal agreement residency card, is not something that would be available to you, even though you hold UK nationality, because Italy views you as an Italian national here in Italy.
And in terms of proving your eligibility for the withdrawal agreement rights on the basis of your British citizenship, is there anything people should do about that, or is?
So as I say, it's not really about enjoying rights in Italy, because the withdrawal agreement isn't going to give you anything sort of additionally in that sense. No. But it is about potentially, accessing benefits and certain rights from the UK end of things. And that's why on gov.uk there's information about how you evidence your rights for the purpose of benefits and pensions. So you can find that on our gov.uk, and it actually references dual nationals. And it says how you can evidence your withdrawal agreement rights for the UK government in terms of accessing benefits, pensions and so on. So do have a look at that. If you've got concerns about, well, how am I going to evidence my withdrawal agreement rights in terms of the UK government when I've only got an Italian residency document as an Italian national, have a look at gov.uk. If you search under evidencing rights for pensions and benefits, you'll find the page there.
Great, thank you. Back to the Carta di Soggiorno, funnily enough. Question about minors. Amit asks, he said he's been told by Milan Questura that a relatively new EU rule means that minors can only get a 5-year card, but he's saying if my teenagers lived in the UK since birth, it's longer than 10 years, so longer than 5 years, so they should get a 10-year card. What's the deal with minors? I've seen Facebook posts about this, and it looks like some Questura have given 10-year cards to minors and others have given 5-year.
Yeah, so our understanding is that the validity of the card is not linked to the right as a permanent resident or ordinary resident when it comes to minors. Is more of an issue of how long can the card be valid, considering the biometrics, the picture, and the kids growing very fast. So we're not sure why some Questura have issued a 10 years card, but they should be issuing a 5 years card for minors. The minor can then exchange it when they turn 18 for a 10 years permanent residency card. That shouldn't mean that the minor has less rights than their permanent resident parents. And just to reassure, so you can still get an attestazione di soggiorno permanente from the comune. The Ministry of Interior say that they could keep issuing. So obviously you could obtain that to prove that your child is a permanent resident. And I think to reassure you, the Questura will be issuing 5 years card generally to all minors. So the fact that they see that a minor has a 5 years card won't be linked to them not being permanent resident as such, if that helps. So while we have raised issue about, adult permanent resident being issued by error with a 5 years card, and I think IOM kind of suggested that if that is happening, you shouldn't just take the card and go away, but you should refuse to take the card and discuss that with the Questura and get in touch with us at IOM. I wouldn't advise to refuse a 5 years card for a minor because our understanding is that is the validity that the card will have. Maybe Jerry wants to add some more. Okay,
thank you. What I hope is a very simple question from Sam. I've been resident in Italy for 4 years this summer. Because of Brexit, will I now have to wait for the full 10 years to apply for permanent residency status, or can I apply once I've received the 5 years? So does the change in status affect our ability to apply for permanent residency after 5 years? And it certainly affects our ability to apply for citizenship, but the permanent residency is another question.
Yeah, so for permanent residency is after 5 years of residency. So it's very important the day that you actually obtain residency, because I know Some people maybe moved to Italy and didn't get residency straight away. So all the time that you were in Italy, you were settled, but you didn't have residency, won't count to the 5 years. But once you get residency, 5 years from that date is when you can become a permanent resident. And usually if you do that and try to obtain the attestazione from the comune, you'll be asked to evidence, what your status was in terms of working, healthcare, if you were self-sufficient, to check that you had all the requirements for the 5 years. The 10 years, there might be some confusion in terms of citizenship, as you were saying, Aidan, that it used to be, it is 4 years for European nationals and 10 years for non-European nationals. So that has changed. But in terms of the 5 years, remains the same. And the years before the end of the transition period are added up to the years from the 1st of January. So they're cumulative.
Yeah. And just on the question of citizenship, if you're a British citizen who wants to apply for Italian citizenship and you haven't already applied for Italian citizenship before the 31st of December on the basis of 4 years residence, then you're looking at a 10-year term before you can apply.
Yeah, in terms of residency route, obviously there are other routes to citizenship and they're all on the Ministry of Interior page, but in terms of residency, it's now become 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Chris says, I've been resident in Italy for 6 years. All my documents are in order. How long can I leave Italy to stay in a non-Schengen country without jeopardizing my residence status?
So in terms of rights as a permanent resident, so after 5 years, as we were saying, you can become a permanent resident. And the big difference between an ordinary resident and a permanent resident is the absences that you're allowed outside of the member state, Italy in this case. So as a permanent resident, you can leave Italy for up to 5 years and you don't lose your residency rights. As an ordinary resident, so before the 5 years, you're allowed 6 months absences in the 12 months period. There are some exceptions, but general rule is 6 months in 12. Once you're a permanent resident, and I would suggest to get some evidence of permanent residency, being the 10 years validity of the biometric card or the attestazione di soggiorno permanente, then you're allowed 5 years outside of Italy and you wouldn't lose your residency rights.
Okay. And linked to that, Margaret's saying, after Brexit, my work in Italy has changed. And in future, some years I'll be in Italy for more than 6 months and some years less than 6 months. I've been resident so far for 3 years. Will I lose my residency in the years when I spend less than 6 months? And who checks?
So who checks is a good question. But in theory, for example, when you come up to the 5 years and you apply for your permanent residency, they are allowed to check. And it's your duty to be able to evidence that you were in Italy for at least 6 months every 12 months. As I say, there are some exceptions, and you can definitely have a look at it. Is on, the European Directive of Freedom of Movement. There are some exceptions, like if you're posted by your job in Italy abroad, you might have longer absences. If you're going to study abroad for a period, you might have longer absences. I think there are some, serious illnesses. These are the exceptions. So it really depends on the case. But in theory, you should try and keep to at least 6 months in Italy.
And I think those exceptions are, you can only once.
Yeah.
So up to 12 months absence, as Greta was saying, is permitted under certain criteria, but only once. So it is really important to maintain that continuous residency, as Greta says. Yeah.
Okay. Here's one that I hope is going to be easy to answer. Laura's saying, my employer is refusing to renew my contract without the Carta di Soggiorno. Is that legal? They say they'll get fined by INPS if they do. My contract is co.
If they're covered by the withdrawal agreement, they were living and working in Italy before 1st of January this year, then as I say, that your withdrawal agreement rights, which include the right to be employed in Italy, fall to you automatically, and they do not depend on you holding the new Carta di Soggiorno. So if you are having services refused to you, healthcare access, employment rights, because you don't hold the Carta di Soggiorno, then please do get in touch with us, because that isn't right. We've raised this consistently with the Italian government, and they've now published information on their website which very clearly says that the new Carta di Soggiorno is not mandatory, and that to enjoy rights under the withdrawal agreement, you are not required to hold it. And in the next couple of days, we'll be linking to that website from our Living in Italy guide. It was published on the website specifically for third parties, for local providers, people providing a service, for employers, and so on. So please do signpost your employer to that. In the meantime, on our Living in Italy page, under the employment section, you can also see information that has been published by the Ministry of Employment, which again talks about the Carta di Soggiorno not being required to register work contracts. So it sounds like you need to signpost your employer to the information that we've got up on our Living in Italy page. If you still have difficulties, then do get in touch with us.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I've got a question here. Somebody James started work in Italy in October, and his company promised to organise his post-Brexit status, but appeared to have done nothing. And he said, I've got no residency status, I'm over the 3-month limit, and he's obviously a bit concerned about what he does now and how he regularises his position if his company doesn't sort it.
I'll take it. So if a person settled in Italy before the end of last year, even if they didn't register their residency, but they're able to evidence that they were lawfully living in Italy before the 31st of December, they can still regularize their status. It's just changed that instead of going to the Comune first, they will need to go to the Questura first. So this person will need to book an appointment to their Questura, and at the appointment date, they will show their evidence of lawfully living in Italy. So a work contract, the lease for the apartment where the person was living, and, if it was a student, would be an enrollment letter from the university. Once they then receive the receipt from the Questura or the card, better the card maybe for the Comune, but you can try with the receipt. You should then go to the Comune and get register their residency there. The reason why they cannot go to the Comune first is because after the 1st of January, the Comune will just not be able to open a request for residency without a receipt from the Questura. But it's very clear on the Vademecum that is available through the Living in Italy page that there is the option of proving that you had residency or the option of proving that you were living in Italy before the 31st of December. And we're seeing a very pragmatic approach. So no panic, but do contact the Questura, because obviously it is very important to have some evidence of your status in Italy, and it might not be very handy to go around with your work contract, your lease, and having to show and explain everything all the time. So I think that is, yeah.
A question has just come up, which we can easily deal with. Is the new Carta di Soggiorno the same as the biometric card we get from the Questura? And the short answer to that is yes. We're referring it to it as the Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica, because obviously you can get a Carta d'Identità, which is biometric, and that's a different document entirely. The Carta d'Identità is an identity card. The Carta di Soggiorno contains information about our rights as residents, and particularly about the withdrawal agreement rights that we have as UK citizens who are lawfully resident and registered in Italy. So, yeah, it's in terms of terminology, we talk about the Carta di Soggiorno Elettronica, which is a biometric card, and that's the one we're talking about when you go to the Questura to get it. A local ASL, in fact, 2 local ASL offices have told Greg that he needs to provide an attestato di soggiorno to gain a tessera sanitaria, even though he's already registered as an Italian resident. Anything to say on that? That sounds a bit strange.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So if it's the first time that he's getting a tessera sanitaria, the ASL can ask for evidence that the person is registered as a resident. Doesn't need to be un'attestazione di iscrizione anagrafica. It's usually sufficient even the avvio di procedimento, so the first document that you're given by the comune when you start your residency process. So they should be fine with any evidence really that you're just resident in Italy.
Okay, thank you. Something that perhaps the elephant in the room at the moment is vaccines. Not strictly connected to the withdrawal agreement, but obviously lots of people are asking questions either for themselves or for relatives. So there are a number of questions about people saying, you know, been told I can't get the vaccine unless I've got a tessera sanitaria, or I need a codice fiscale to get the vaccine. Is there anything we can say about what we understand to be the position currently on vaccines, just that might be helpful for people with questions?
So I'll just say a few words. The vaccine programme is being rolled out regionally, and each region has a slightly different way of delivering and rolling out the vaccine. So definitely check what procedure is being used by your region. We do know that some regions do require you to be registered for healthcare to be able to book an appointment for the vaccine. And we have raised this consistently with the Ministry of Health. They are aware that this is an issue. They've always been clear from the outset that if you're living in Italy, you will be eligible for the vaccine. Obviously, it's being rolled out in age groups and employment types, but you know, if you are living in Italy, you are eligible for the vaccine. That's not in question, but there is, in some regions, a practical kind of hurdle in being able to book an appointment if you're not registered for healthcare. We know that some people have managed to book an appointment by getting in touch via calling the regional ASL or by even writing to them rather than using the online booking system. But rest assured that the Ministry of Health is very aware of this issue and is looking into it. So our advice would be get in touch with the ASL, try and book an appointment if you think you are eligible. If you are having difficulties, contact them via other means rather than just the appointment system. And also rest assured that the Ministry of Health is looking into this. And as soon as we have an update, we will certainly publish that on both our Living In Guide and our travel advice page on gov.uk.
Thank you. A quickie from Roy. Which queue do you join at the airport on arrival in Italy if you are a resident but British?
The non-EU queue you will be
Sadly.
joining. You will be joining. But as I say, I mean, it's important just to underline that, you know, you are a non-EU national. You may be a withdrawal agreement beneficiary, but you are a non-EU national. But because of the withdrawal agreement, you're not treated, under the Schengen Border Code as other non-EU nationals are treated, in the sense that you shouldn't be questioned for your reasons for travel. You shouldn't have your passport stamped. Clearly, you don't need to have a visa to enter Italy, and you don't need to have, evidence a return ticket, for example. So, in that sense, the process should be simpler, but it is the non-EU queue.
Okay. There's a question arisen about whether it's going to be possible to watch this Q&A later, and I understand yes, it is on Facebook. So if you came in late and you missed the first section, and I know one or two people have said I've just arrived and I've got this question, I don't know if you've covered it. If we don't cover your question in the last few minutes, then you'll be able to watch the whole thing again. And I'm reasonably confident we've covered all of the issues that have been raised, at least in broad terms, even if not every individual specific questions. I've got a question from Lisa, who says, I'm a non-EU spouse, American Kiwi, of a British citizen with permanent residence. So British citizen covered by the withdrawal agreement, family member of that British citizen. My 5-year Carta di Soggiorno expired while I was waiting for the new Carta di Soggiorno. She said, if I were the spouse of any other non-EU, I'd be able to apply for a provisional document at my Questura to allow me to travel without the renewed document. How am I fixed as the spouse of a British citizen?
I'll say a few words. I'll say a few words about the withdrawal agreement. The withdrawal agreement protects family members, close family members, if they were a family member before the end of the transition period. So if this is a spouse who was a spouse of a UK national who was settled in Italy, the UK national is covered by the withdrawal agreement if they were settled in Italy before the end of last year. The spouse was a spouse before the end of the last year and continues to be a spouse. Then you are covered as a family member, close family member, by the withdrawal agreement. It doesn't matter what your nationality is. You can be a non-EU national family member and you will be covered by the withdrawal agreement and enjoy withdrawal agreement rights here in Italy. So my advice would be, and I don't know if Greta wants to jump in as well, but my advice would be to go to the Questura to request the new Carta di Soggiorno issued under the withdrawal agreement as a family member of the UK national who is covered by the withdrawal agreement. Now, I don't know if the UK national has already obtained the Carta di Soggiorno. Otherwise, I would suggest potentially going together to make a request at the same time. I don't know, Greta, if you want to.
Yeah, no, I was trying to understand the details of the question, because my understanding is the spouse already has a residency card, a Carta di Soggiorno, potentially as the spouse of the British national, so as EU national previously, but that card has expired. So I would definitely say to contact the Questura and point out that you should now be getting this new Carta di Soggiorno under the withdrawal agreement. In terms of the validity, obviously some of the permessi di soggiorno and Carta di Soggiorno validity was extended due to the pandemic, so you might want to have a look at that. But yeah, definitely contact the Questura and just point out the vademecum. Some Questura are just slightly confused about what card to get to UK family member of UK national that already had some other sort of resident permit previously. Obviously, if your Carta di Soggiorno was based on something else and it wasn't as the spouse, you could also just renew it in your own rights rather than as the spouse of the UK national. If any doubt or any issue with the Questura, you can contact us at IOM.
And if you were a third country national spouse of a UK national covered by the withdrawal agreement who's got a current permesso di soggiorno, even before that expires, I think you can go to the Questura and request now your withdrawal agreement residency document, your Carta di Soggiorno.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely the theory. The practice we're seeing is that some Questura, because they are under so much pressure and they have extended all permits to a lot of other third country nationals, might not be very keen to renew a document before it has expired. So contact them and they might tell you, depending on how far off is the expiry date, they might tell you to come back at a later point. But obviously your resident permit as the spouse of a EU national does remain valid and doesn't need to be exchanged in a rush. Will need to be exchanged eventually, though.
Okay, thank you. Question from Jane. She's a resident before the 1st of January, and she's saying, do I have access to healthcare in Italy if I don't renew my present work contract? I'm thinking of taking some time off.
I mean, as I say, there's different ways of registering for healthcare in Italy. So do have a look at the details on our Living in Italy page. It's not only through your employer, through self-employed. You can register via voluntary contributions, for example, not in all regions, but in the majority of them. So, there are different ways to register for healthcare. Greta, I don't know if you want to add to that, but have a look at we have a detailed guide on Living in Italy, which is titled Registering for Healthcare, and it talks through each of those routes. So I would discuss your options with your local ASL. If you're not registering for healthcare via employment contributions, there are other ways of registering for healthcare. Okay,
thank you. And just a quick run back to the question you dealt with just now about the third country national spouse of a UK citizen. They've given us a little bit of extra information saying, I've requested the new card already, but there's a very long wait. I urgently need to travel. And what can I do? Because obviously returning to Italy without a valid card of some sort might be quite difficult. Any thoughts on that?
I'm really sorry. I think that you do need to check with your Questura in terms of being able to travel and re-enter Italy just with the receipt or with an expired residency card or carta di soggiorno. I'm really sorry. If you want, we can have a look into it, but you'll need to contact us maybe outside of the Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've had a number of questions from people about relatives visiting from the UK. We've obviously talked about the fact that if you've got UK, obviously now non-EU citizens staying with you, you should notify the Questora, no matter how long they stay for. But also questions about what people need in order to come to Italy to visit family. I mean, obviously, there's immediately a question about whether they're allowed to, because currently under UK rules, just visiting family would be seen as a holiday, and therefore you shouldn't be doing it at least this week until the position. Well, until the position changes for Italy. I mean, Italy is still not on a green list for the UK, but assuming that that changes, what sort of things will family need to bring in order to be able to come into Italy to visit to visit people who are resident here?
So we should probably separate sort of the COVID requirements to kind of EU exit. So COVID, definitely check travel advice pages before planning to visit Italy. You know, there are currently restrictions on leaving the UK. It's currently illegal. International travel is illegal unless for certain reasons out of the UK. So you need to check the travel advice pages. The green list, which you've heard about, the traffic light system, the green list country, that's really about what you do once back in the UK. It doesn't sort of give you, you know, it doesn't open the door to visit countries that are on the green list. It's more about the requirements when you come back to the UK. Yeah. So definitely check travel advice, because if you are going to a country where it is still, you know, illegal in the UK's eyes to travel to, in terms of travel advice and the UK's position, you know, you may have difficulty, for example, with travel insurance, booking flights even. So check travel advice pages for the country that you are planning to travel to. So that's the COVID bit of it. In terms of EU exit, for travelling from the UK to Italy, you don't need a visa for stays of 90 and 180 days. So that's a rolling window. That's counted from the moment you enter the Schengen area to the time that you leave. Be aware that those 90 and 180 days, that's for the whole Schengen area. So if you then go to France or you then go to Spain, those will be included in your rolling total. So keep an eye on how many days you're spending in Italy. Under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, your UK issued EHIC will be valid. So you'll have access to kind of needs arising healthcare in Italy through your UK EHIC. The other thing to be aware of is you should have a 6 months validity on your UK passport when coming into Italy. That's a Schengen border code requirement. So double check the validity of your passport. As we've been talking about, as somebody who isn't resident in the EU, you're resident in the UK, you'll have your passport stamped when coming into Italy, because that's how they start counting your 90 and 180 days. And you may be asked to evidence, for example, reasons for travel, a return flight ticket, evidence of financial resources while you're in Italy. So have some of that ready as well, in case you're questioned at the border. The main thing is check the travel advice pages before planning to come anywhere in the EU, especially regarding the COVID current COVID requirements, and be aware that you have a 90 and 180 day visa-free period. If stays of longer than that, you're going to need some form of visa.
Okay, I'm conscious, folks, that we've already gone over the hour. We've had lots of questions, lots of good questions, and we covered a lot of ground. I hope that we've managed to deal with the issues that all of you had, even if we haven't answered your specific questions. We will have more of these, Jerry. We plan to, because obviously people are still coming up with questions and still coming up against difficulties, and obviously we want to try and help people as they get through the teething problems of what Brexit means and how it works in practice. Thank you very much once again to Jerry and to Greta for all of their expert advice, and thank you to you for supporting these Facebook Lives and sending in your questions. And we look forward to seeing you once again when the next one comes round. And a reminder that this Facebook Live will be available to watch again on Facebook. So look out for that if you came in late or just simply want to remind yourself of the answers to some of the questions. Thank you all very much, folks, and have a good evening.
Okay, please stay there.